Welcome to A Moment of Xen. Time to sit back and relax as model, actress, mentor, and supermom XenSams takes you on a sexy and wild ride, covering the latest in film, fashion, pop culture, cryptocurrency, fintech, cannabis, and entertainment from the millennial mom's perspective. Here's your host, XenSams.
Welcome back, NYC and beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, XenSams, celebrating 6.5 years on air and marking episode 249. Happy New Year, my friends. Here's to another exciting episode. It's truly a pleasure spending time with you on the airwaves. Thank you for tuning in every Saturday night and for engaging with me on social media. That connection is what makes all of this worthwhile. You could continue to follow me on the gram at XenSams. That's Zen with an X, not a Z. And remember, all episodes stream Sundays at 2 p.m. on our YouTube channel and on Your Home TV, directly on our channel at mox.yourhometv.com. Welcome back to A Moment of Xen, where alongside our experts on the microphone, we explore film, fashion, pop culture, cryptocurrency, cannabis, fintech, and health. And yes, everything in between, always through the lens of the millennial mom's perspective. Today's lineup fuels the body, the mind, and the heart. Let's dive right in. In our Lifted by Science segment brought to you by CO2 Lift, we're exploring the modern landscape of plastic surgery and how today's patients, technologies, and next-gen surgeons are reshaping the field. We're going to be joined by Dr. Anthony Nye. He's an aesthetic plastic surgery fellow at West End Plastic Surgery in Washington, D.C., and he's a board-eligible aesthetic and reconstructive surgeon known for blending technical precision with artistry and wellness. In the Elevated Experiences segment brought to you by MTKNY Group and the MTKNY Travel Club, my next guest is Leanne Locken, television personality, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and the cultural force best known for the Real Housewives of Dallas. Today, we're talking about evolution, access, and elevated living, from navigating public life and personal reinvention to how travel, environment, and relationships shape the next chapter. In the Brain Blueprint segment brought to you by the Melillo Centers, joining me is Mackenzie Westmore, actress, singer, producer, entrepreneur, and founder of Westmore Beauty. Alongside my co-contributor, Dr. Robert Melillo, world-renowned brain expert, best-selling author, and founder of the Melillo Centers, internationally recognized for his research-based work in ADD, ADHD, autism, and neurological imbalance, with a focus on root causes, not just symptoms. Today's conversation explores ADD, ADHD, and the right brain advantage, how creative minds process the world differently, why emotional regulation matters, and how understanding brain wiring can turn overwhelm into strength. Stay tuned for today's Clean Collective segment brought to you by Society Brands, featuring Wolf Tactical. We're redefining what clean living really means in a modern high-exposure world. Joining me is Kate Nolte, also known as Tulum Trainer. She's a seasoned fitness expert, founder of The Quick Minutes, and creator of Kate's Real Food Guide. Today, we're talking about tactical strength, resistance training, and why building physical resilience through movement, including weighted vest training, is becoming an essential pillar of clean, intentional living. Stay tuned for Kate Nolte. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by the Fieldhouse in Northvale, New Jersey. A vibrant and fresh take on youth and adult sports and family fun, and home to the New Jersey Thunder softball program. Plan unforgettable birthday parties or private events, or explore camps and programs that keep kids active and inspired. Take time for yourself in adult leagues or rent a field or court with friends. From a cutting-edge gaming cave to hitting and pitching centers and top-tier sports instructors, the Fieldhouse is reigniting the next generation of play. Head to njfieldhouse.com.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Xen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, XenSams. Welcome back to the Clean Collective segment brought to you by Society Brands. We're having a conversation that goes far beyond skincare labels and ingredient decks, because clean living in today's world isn't just about what we eat or what we put on our bodies. It's about how we build our bodies. According to the World Health Organization, more than 90% of the global population is exposed to air pollution levels that exceed safe guidelines. Research published in Environmental Science and Technology confirms that microplastics are now present in human blood, lungs, and placental tissue. And the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences continues to link everyday chemical exposures to hormone disruption, metabolic dysfunction, and increased cancer risk. So the question becomes, how do we live clean in a world that isn't? My guest today believes the answer lies in movement, resistance, and real-world strength, building bodies that are resilient, adaptable, and prepared for modern life. Joining me is Kate Nolte. She's also known as the Tulum trainer all over social media, a seasoned fitness expert with over 15 years of experience, founder of the Quick Minutes video series and Kate's Real Food Guide. Kate specializes in online coaching for women who want real, sustainable results. Today, we're talking tactical strength, resistance training, and why tools like Wolf Tactical weighted vests are becoming part of a smarter, cleaner, more resilient lifestyle. Kate, welcome to the show, superstar.
Thank you very much for having me back.
Okay, let's get right to it. Let's talk about clean living redefined. So, Kate, for years, clean living has been framed around food labels and skincare ingredients, but the CDC tells us we're exposed to hundreds of chemicals daily through air, water, and household products, and even furniture and clothing. So from your perspective, what does clean living really mean in today's world? And why does movement and strength training belong in that conversation?
When I think of clean living, I think about the 5 pillars of health: your food, your exercise, your sleep hygiene, your stress, and your hydration. So if I'm looking to live clean in a realistic way, of those 5 pillars, I'm going to look at my movement, because that's something I can do every single day that doesn't necessarily need to cost anything. And I don't need to then be part of something or make it very complicated. So clean living to me starts with movement every single day. Everybody can walk. Everybody can walk every single day. And when you find the rhythm of walking with intention and walking to then be a clean human in the world, your mind changes, the thoughts change. You're going to be thinking about on your walk, what am I going to have for my first meal of the day? What am I going to then drink later in the day in terms of my hydration? Wonder what time I'm going to go to bed tonight, wake up tomorrow morning. So I find daily movement as probably the most obvious pillar of clean living and a way to own it. Strength training, of course, would be next level in terms of everyday movement. And it just provides, I think, the body and your mind with a defense.
Yeah, and that toxic load definitely lessens with movement, right? Because you're excreting those toxins, you're sweating them out, and they're not staying stuck within your detox pattern. So I love what you're saying. And I love that you emphasize consistency over perfection. That idea that movement itself is one of our most powerful protective tools is incredibly empowering. Now, why resistance training is non-negotiable? That's kind of where the conversation is headed. So strength training is no longer just about aesthetics. The American College of Sports Medicine reports that resistant training supports bone density, insulin sensitivity, hormone regulation, and longevity, especially for women as we age. Why do you believe resistance training has become non-negotiable for modern women?
I feel like if the goal of a modern woman is to be independent in the world and to be able to not be afraid of, for example, perimenopause and menopause that's coming, because that's going to be a season in which our bodies are going to deteriorate so much faster than men. So strength training is not only physically, yes, going to increase your bone density because that is rapidly going to be going down at that season of life, and also maintain muscle mass. That's also going to be decreasing really fast. And the irregulation of our hormones, it's going to help ease that imbalance. Besides all of those important things physiologically, psychologically, it builds your self-confidence so that as challenges come and as the physical discomforts come with aging, with perimenopause and menopause, a woman can anticipate that that's coming and have, again, like the grace and the mental reps to manage it, to tell herself, I can handle the frozen shoulder. I feel really irritable today. My back hurts. I'm feeling a little bit, I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling this wave of insecurity. Well, I did do my push-ups last night. I, wore my weighted vest and I did the walk this morning. So if I can do that, I can do this. It's sort of like this check and balance system with your habits and behaviors and being able to access that to then handle the next thing that's coming.
It's such an empowering message because strength as self-care is not punishment. It completely shifts the narrative. So let's talk about tactical strength and real world function. How does training with that added resistance, whether it's a weighted vest or, plates in the backpack, translate into real world strength and confidence outside the gym?
The stronger your body is, the more capable you are of doing whatever it is that you want to do. That's why I was visiting my mom last month in Connecticut, and she's 82, and she's strong. She has no health issues. She is vibrant. She does quick minutes every day. She walks. She strength trains. She plays tennis. She's 82. She runs for the ball. And something I always say to her at the end of every visit is, Mom, I need you to keep doing what you're doing because I need you to be independent. And, I lost my dad 6 years ago, and she's been extremely aware that she needs to maintain her independence, which is her physical strength, for a reason to get out the door, for a reason to get dressed. She wouldn't be able to do all of those things if she didn't maintain her physical strength. And she knows that if she maintains her physical strength, she's going to maintain her mental strength. So when you have friends who are deteriorating physically, you see them deteriorate mentally. She's got girlfriends who can't recall and don't have mobility of their hands. They can't carry their coffee cup correctly. And she shares these things with me, and she's just so proud of herself that she has been an athlete her whole life. And now she is just realizing the value of it because she is fiercely independent, and she will be and can be until she's not. The whole point is for it to translate into the later years. It is no longer important enough to have a six-pack and toned arms. Yes, it's great for a moment, but what's the point of that? I can live independently in the world. I can put my suitcase at the top part of the airplane. I can hinge with my hip and take the groceries, to the bottom level of the refrigerator. I can live fully, which means that my brain is also still there.
Everything you're saying is resonating with me so much right now. My mom is in her 60s and just had hip replacement surgery.
Exactly.
My grandmother is in her 80s and she has dementia. And these are women who never exercised. So let's talk about weighted vest training and performance. So weighted vests like those from Wolf Tactical are being used more widely, not just by athletes, but by everyday people focused on functional fitness. And when you look at the research in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning, it shows that weighted vest training can improve cardiovascular efficiency, muscular endurance, and core stability when used appropriately. So from your coaching lens, how can weighted vests safely elevate workouts, especially for women focused on mobility and longevity?
Well, it kind of goes back to what you said.
Why is adding the extra weight? Why is adding the extra weight so important?
Well, it kind of goes back to what you said before about how women can be sort of afraid of their future or afraid of perimenopause, menopause, and things like that. So, and if we talk about how strength training as just a tool is your first line of defense against managing physical discomfort and body deterioration, then the weighted vest is just the most comfortable entranceway into strength training because it's not intimidating. It's not the vision of a woman putting, a barbell on her back and doing a deep squat, which may seem, so far away from her reality. But that's just one style of strength training. But strength training is any external load that is heavier than what you have carrying around that is going to give you all of the health benefits. And also, it's a massive confidence booster. When you're putting on a weighted vest, it's actually also very relaxing to have physical weight on you. It's very sort of sobering and makes you feel very present. And immediately when you put on a weighted vest, for example, you hold yourself up because if you don't, it just feels very unnatural to work against it. So you work with it. And I just feel like it offers the general population, especially women, access to a really simple version of strength training. Eventually, of course, I want all women to have some iron in their hands and do squats and deadlifts and shoulder presses, but that might be too soon. So when you see a woman or anybody in the general population who's wearing the weighted vest, knowing what it's doing, giving her fighting bone density, raising her metabolism, helping her regulate her hormones, and again, a huge confidence boost, she's doing her part. And she can do that every single day. And the beauty of wearing a weighted vest is that it's wrapped around your core. Core strength is about supporting your spine, right? And so many people who are deconditioned have this sort of posture or a variation of it. That's core strength falling apart. That's like wilting away. And when you wear a weighted vest, it's quite comfortable because the load is wrapped in a very efficient way so that you can walk up the stairs like that. You could turn and pick up the baby. You could squat down and pick up something off the floor. The weight doesn't have to be in this black and white strict format like you would see in a gym. So again, it's just this opportunity to have strength train translate outside of a gym setting to everyday movement, putting something on a high shelf, hinging at the hip, bending and squatting with your knees. And I just feel like it's a fantastic tool for so many people to jump on this resistance training path in the least intimidating way.
So I want to talk about that. Where do you start with weighted vests? So weighted vest training is powerful, but what you just said, how you start matters. And the National Strength and Conditioning Association emphasizes gradual load progression to prevent joint strain or overuse injuries, particularly for those women new to resistance training or returning after time off. So for someone listening right now who's curious about incorporating a weighted vest into walking, into mobility work or strength training, what weight range makes sense to start with, and how should they think about progressing safely?
Oh, good question. Okay. So I love that you started the example with a walking program. I always tell people if you're new to fitness and movement or clean living, walking is something that you could and should do every single day. Next level, add the weighted vest. Get comfortable and familiar with what it feels like to have the heart rate go up higher than your regular walk because you have a resistance load. And get used to the work of the heart having to pump oxygen to muscles to maintain that. Then I would actually add a mobility practice because when your joints are able to push through their range of motion, they are going to become stronger. Once your joints can bend, for example, knees over toes, full flexion of my elbow joint, full shoulder press, my shoulders, then once a woman or a man is more familiar with their ability of their joints to bend, to flex, to move, then we add weight to it. So walking with a weighted vest, mobility, the ability of the joints to move and be, dare I say, greased up, right? Like it always makes me concerned when a woman says that, oh, my knees are bad, yet she can sit and stand it and get out of the chair. Your knees aren't bad. Your knees can bend. You just don't do it often. Then we would progress to then weights. So I tell almost all women start with 10 pounds, 10 pounds per hand. Less than that isn't really going to give you the benefit that we're looking for, and it's not hard enough. But if you've been doing a weighted vest for a while, that external weight is not going to seem so abstract or scary. When a woman in the gym is holding 5-pound weights, she's not really doing anything. That's sort of controversial to say. It's not enough. It's not enough.
Not enough.
It needs to feel hard. You need to actually exert towards the end of your set. If anything, I usually have a first-time client pick up at least 12 or 15-pound weights per hand. And the look on her face as if she thinks that, I'm pushing her to her extreme. No, but it needs to be heavy enough. It needs to be heavy enough for you to actually, your brain to be entertained by the fact that like, oh, this is a real load. So piece of advice, go heavier than you think you can. Always.
I love that. Now, I want to talk about the clean collective mindset. So when you zoom out, what we breathe, what we drink, what we put in our homes, and how we move our bodies, it's all connected, like you said. Clean living isn't just about removing toxins, it's about building resilience. So if you could give women one starting point toward a cleaner, stronger, more resilient lifestyle, where would you tell them to begin?
Mindset. If the conversations you're having with yourself are not absolutely cheering yourself on, you are not building optimism, creativity, joy, gratitude, then it's going to be a really hard day ahead. I have a strong practice in creative writing. I wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, Monday through Sunday. I have for over 10 years. And I write and I journal and I do 3 pages of gratitude. I do things like, what's working for me today? What am I excited about? Something wonderful is going to happen today. I fill my cup Zen for at least an hour of mindset practice. The push-ups and the squats and the traffic is nothing compared to the discipline and that high value mindset work that I do every single day. Because if I'm not talking to myself that way and filling my cup, then the day is going to overwhelm me. And then it's so much more work to manage the next thing and the next thing. And so mindset 100%.
Well, there you said it. Simple, intentional steps that compound over time. That's real wellness, and it starts with your mind. Beautifully said.
Mindset, yep.
Well, Kate, we are at the end of our date, my dear. I mean, this conversation was grounding, empowering, and incredibly timely. So thank you for reminding us that clean living isn't about fear. It's about strength, awareness, and capability.
Mm-hmm. Independent living I just love how older generations are becoming more present for us, especially if we're in our 40s, our moms in our 80s or 90s. And I love that wellness, clean living is not just about having a body type. It's about living independently and living well and, living your best because you can. It's totally up to you. It's mind and body together.
You can follow Kate Nolte on Instagram at Tulum Trainer. You can explore her Quick Minutes training series, and you can learn more about her programs focused on mobility, strength, and real-world resilience. To our listeners, this has been the Clean Collective segment brought to you by Society Brands and Wolf Tactical, reminding you that what you build inside your body matters just as much as what you keep out of it. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Cleanomic. Cleanomic zip bags are certified compostable. They break down into nutrient-rich fertilizer that nourishes the earth. They're BPA-free, so no harmful chemicals leak into your food. Available in snack, sandwich, quart, and gallon sizes. They ship straight to your door. No more store runs. Plus, get free trash bags for life with the subscription. Protect your food and health from hidden microplastic particles by heading to Cleanomic.com today.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, XenSams. In our Lifted by Science segment brought to you by CO2 Lift, today we're joined by Dr. Anthony Nye. He's an aesthetics plastic surgery fellow at West End Plastic Surgery in Washington, D.C. Originally from Indianapolis, he earned his medical degree from the University of South Carolina School of Medicine, Greenville, and completed his plastic surgery residency at Virginia Commonwealth University, where he served as chief academic resident. He's a board-eligible aesthetic and reconstructive surgeon specializing in both male and female aesthetics, passionate about blending artistry and wellness to help patients look and feel their best. And today, he's helping us unpack how patients, technology, and the new generation of surgeons are actively reshaping the future of plastic surgery. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Thanks so much for having me.
So excited. So, Dr. Nye, the landscape of plastic surgery looks very different than it did even a decade ago. And today's surgeons are entering the field with more exposure to cutting-edge technology. You got 3D simulations, regenerative medicine, and minimally invasive techniques than ever before. And that's actually interesting and ties into the bigger picture because according to the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, over 70% of current aesthetic innovations have emerged within the last 15 years, meaning younger surgeons are often trained directly on the newest standards rather than having to adapt later. Yet the public still carries the misconception that age automatically equals expertise. So what are some common misconceptions you've encountered about younger surgeons like yourself, and how does your training or even your approach differ from those trained, say, 20 or 30 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and it's pretty easy to answer. So training now, or what I did, is actually different from those surgeons in the past. So it used to be, you would do medical school, then you would do a general surgery residency, most commonly, followed by fellowships in plastics, followed by fellowships in whatever subspecialty of plastics you went into, whether it's aesthetics or hand or microsurgery. Uniquely now, the most common way we train here in the US is we do medical school and then we go straight into plastic surgery right out of the gate. So for me, that was 6 years of training right after medical school of really intense plastic surgery from the day I graduated as a doctor. So that's a little different. So we are eating, breathing plastic surgery from the minute we get our doctorate, which, I mean, for some, there's arguments pro and against. Some people say like, well, the general surgery background is great, you're broad spectrum, but there are those like myself that argue this intense specialization and the broad nature of plastic surgery, which is already broad enough, just really helps set us apart and get us down the road faster to help serve our patients. You know, misconceptions that I still get all the time are that I'm too young, or am I still a student, or am I still interning with the senior partner in the office? But no, it's correct. I've done all the training. I'm ready to go. But, you know, it's kind of ironic that people will say like, oh, you're too young, because honestly, in the field, that's the goal, right? We're supposed to be like looking too young for a lot of these things. But, you know, you just explain your background to people and then they get it pretty quickly after talking to you.
Yeah. And now we're watching procedures evolve at lightning speed, right? From ultrasound guided injections to regenerative fat grafting to AI assisted imaging. I mean, patients don't always realize how dramatically the toolbox has expanded. And a recent ASAPS report found that over 40% of practicing surgeons say keeping up with new technology is now one of their biggest challenges, which gives younger surgeons who trained with those tools built-in advantage, right? So how does being recently trained, if you will, help you embrace new tools and techniques that older surgeons may be slower to adopt, but still balancing those modern approaches with a respect for the classic principles of plastic surgery?
For sure. It's a great question. Also, I love that you said principles of plastic surgery, because that's what my education was. My education was teaching me what are the core aspects of plastic surgery principally. We're not like general surgeons in the fact that when you want your gallbladder taken out, you'd prefer not a lot of creative expression in that. So you want them to do the same thing over, because we know it's safe.
Yeah.
For plastics, we have that creative expression. So it's more principle driven. You know, when you mention like ultrasound assisted injection of fillers or other, that to me is really my standard, because that's what I mean. Ultrasound is a huge part of our technology and training. So for me, this just makes common sense. Like, of course, we're going to do everything we can to do the best and safest result for our patients. Whereas I've had this conversation with people established in their career who feel maybe they don't need to do all these things. And I understand they're getting great results as well, and they don't potentially need that as well. But I like to be able to offer things for myself that I'm going to get the best and safest result for patients. It's all about safety for me. It's about our patient goal, but then also being safe. So
yeah,
maybe I do incorporate things a little bit faster, but I'm also listening and learning to people's experiences as well.
That's fascinating. And honestly, so reassuring, because patients want innovation, but to your point, they also want safety and timeless techniques, right? And you explain that blend beautifully. So let's chat about regional and generational trends in DC. So DC is such a unique market. It has this interesting mix of politics, academia, corporate culture, and a rising younger demographic. Nationally, we know millennials now make up the fastest growing group seeking aesthetic treatments, and geography heavily shapes aesthetic preferences. For example, coastal cities tend to lean more towards subtle, refined results, while other parts of the country skew more dramatic. Okay. So how does DC's specific culture influence the types of procedures patients choose there? And do you see differences in preferences among younger versus older patients?
100%. I think this is so interesting what you're talking about too, because we're talking about regional or where people live and how it's affecting healthcare, which I find it to be a really fascinating topic. There's other aspects about it with surgical techniques that change based on where you live too, not necessarily in aesthetics, but some other areas. For DC, 100%, we have our own aesthetic. It's the natural result that people don't know something has been done. They want to look perfect and no one know that they've had something adjusted or worked on. So it does change based on when you compare to other coastal cities like Miami or Los Angeles. Our aesthetic is different. Did I end up in DC because I think that aligns more with how I view things for patients. Now, you're always listening to your patient. It doesn't matter where you live. So you're going to look for your patient's goals, no matter if the community at large has one aesthetic. You're going to work with your individual patients. So even though maybe the city has a vibe, it doesn't really matter because when you're in the room, it's just you and that person. So I think that, although to answer your question, yes, DC has its own aesthetic. Does that really matter on the day to day? It can, but also like talk to the person in front of you and find out what they want and where their vision is. Yes, for differences in older and younger. It's kind of cool as a plastic surgeon that's young. I'm kind of starting off with people that are often more my age. They feel comfortable coming to someone who's younger. As the general rule, then none of this is like hardcore or hard line, but they tend to do more corrective things as opposed to aging related changes. But when I've talked to my more senior mentors, as they did the same thing when they were younger, so maybe it's more corrective things in the youth that are more balancing your own anatomy, and it's not so much aging related phenomena, but you age and your patients age with you. So then they're going to come in 10 or 20 years and start doing procedures that are more age related. So yes, those are your facelift times or the effects of time you're going to start correcting as opposed to just balancing who you are as a person at baseline. So
well, that's
it's
so
kind of fun to age with your patients and kind of see them along the course of life. So
that's so insightful. And I love how you broke down the nuance between generations and even the cultural personality of a city. It really shows how individualized aesthetics has become.
Oh, for sure.
Now, we're absolutely in a recovery revolution, all right? The new era of recovery, if you will. 10 years ago, most patients didn't talk about lymphatic drainage, red light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen, hydration protocols, or regenerative post-op care. Now, platforms like Real Self report that over 60% of patients consider recovery time a deciding factor when choosing a procedure. And that's where CO2 Lift and other evidence-based tools really shine, supporting tissue healing and minimizing downtime, which is key. So how do you guide patients through that recovery period? Do you have any specific go-tos in your post-procedure protocol?
100%. And I would actually expand it. So I know what you're saying. It's all about recovery period. And we're really trying to like zone in on that, but I would expand it. It's really more perioperative timing. So what are you doing before surgery? What are we doing during surgery? And then what are we doing after surgery? All of those things actually maximize your recovery. So you mentioned CO2 Lift, which is a product that I really love. And I learned a little over a year ago. I actually was at a conference with some people that I highly respect in this field, big names in plastic surgery who have done the research, worked with these companies, and have operated for years. They told me about it. I started using it and learning about it myself. And then now was able to help bring it on board here at West End recently. So we are including it in kind of our idea for how to optimize. We're starting that facelift population, but I think it's so important to do before surgery as well as after surgery, because you're really priming the skin ahead of time, getting your skin at its healthy, its baseline before you do the surgery, as well as then doing it after. You mentioned lymphatic drainage for post-procedure. That can also be incorporated before surgery as well. Diet and nutrition, optimizing your nutritional status before surgery, as well as leading it on afterwards. We've had the growth of regenerative medicine you mentioned as well. We are using exosome therapies a lot, whether or not that's in hair restoration or skin, using it in our pre and post-procedural protocols as well. So I think the combination of these CO2 Lift with exosome therapies is going to be huge for patients with procedures, whether that's a big thing like a facelift or maybe something minor, more like microneedling and a laser resurfacing. Yeah. They all have their utility. I'm a huge fan of those technologies right now.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I love that you're leaning into recovery as its own science, not an afterthought. Patients need that level of support. And you're right, CO2 Lift is clinically researched, clinically verified, increases hydration by 17% per treatment per application, right? So these are very, very significant numbers. And a lot of providers have equated CO2 Lift treatment to a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, which is great for, of course, post-surgery recovery.
And one of the reasons I like it as well is because it makes sense to me from a biomechanics pathway or human physiology. So I'm able to like look at what they're talking about and then see the results. And then it makes sense from just an anatomy perspective and how the body works. I personally think of it as less of although it has aesthetic uses, but really this is a medical treatment for people that has like really astounding results. It has great aesthetic applications too. Like me and my husband love to use it at home. He's probably, outside of me, the biggest proponent of it.
I love that.
He loves it. So every time I have one, it's like Christmas morning for us.
Oh, that's great. And social media has completely rewritten the aesthetic playbook, right? We see trends surge overnight, buccal fat removal, fox eye lifts, exaggerated fillers, often without context or clinical nuance, which irritates me so much. So how do you help patients separate hype from reality? And what's one trend you hope stays and one you wish would disappear forever?
Well, that is, you asked such a tough question, because I mean, you would think the answer is simple, but expectation management is one of the key aspects about plastic surgery, from the consult time to all of it. So what expectation management is: results. What can we truly offer someone? People come in with AI generated photos of themselves now, which, although I agree, looks fantastic. It's just not physically possible to achieve that with our current technologies. Maybe in 20 years, who knows what advances we're going to have to reach these goals. But expectation management about what is actually possible to do safely and based on someone's anatomy, I think that is foundational. But then also, to your point about recovery periods, what is a recovery period going to be like? Because you see these AI generated photos now, which are awesome, of like before transitioning into the after subtly. I mean, they're glazing over what the process of like how you actually get there too. So I think really setting expectations. You cannot say it enough, what we can actually do, because I mean, if you under deliver to someone, they're not going to be happy. You really have to like be clear on what you can do for someone.
Yes, thank you. The internet doesn't always show the after, right? Your balanced approach is exactly what people need to hear. Now, let's expand on that, the grounded advice for anyone considering a procedure. So there's nearly 18 million cosmetic procedures performed annually in the United States. The demand keeps rising, but so does misinformation. People need grounded, emotionally intelligent guidance as they enter this space. So if you could give one grounded piece of advice to anyone considering a procedure, what would it be?
So I think you have to spend time to find a surgeon that you feel comfortable asking questions to, because that is the key. If they don't make you feel comfortable to where you can ask this embarrassing question to about, you might feel like it's embarrassing. It might not be embarrassing at all, but if you're not feeling comfortable to just share what's actually inside of your head, we can't understand how to best prepare you for surgery or tell you what we can or cannot do. Plastic surgery has been compared to psychosurgery because it really is a combination of therapy and changes in your human body. So it can be a huge deal for people, and being able to really communicate and trust and be comfortable sharing sometimes these really sensitive and private thoughts is a big deal. So I take it very seriously when people share these kind of things. So you have to be able to communicate with your surgeon. So number one advice,
communication.
You have to be able to talk to the person, because if you can't, you're not going to get a good result.
Yeah, that connection is important. And that's a powerful takeaway, Dr. Nye, truly the kind of advice that can change someone's decision-making for the better. Because if you're walking into a plastic surgery consult and you cannot communicate, connect, feel comfortable, feel open to talk to your surgeon about what it is that the end result should feel like in your own mind, or have that vision accurately mapped out, it's a lose-lose for both. So you're 100%, you're on the money. You're on the money. Well, we're at the end. We are at the end of our date, my dear. I really learned a lot. Thank you for coming on and sharing your incredible knowledge. Our platform loves experts on the microphone like yourself. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
That was the incredible Dr. Anthony Nye, aesthetic plastic surgery fellow at West End Plastic Surgery in Washington, D.C., and board-eligible plastic surgeon. Definitely follow him on the gram at Dr. Nye, the plastics guy, and learn more about West End Plastic Surgery. You could head directly to their website at westendplasticsurgery.com. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Xen is brought to you by CO2 Lift. As we age, our skin loses moisture and elasticity, causing wrinkled skin. You can reverse this aging process with CO2 CO2 Lift. CO2 Lift utilizes the powerful benefits of carbon dioxide to lift, tighten, and regenerate your skin. This simple, painless at-home carboxytherapy treatment is scientifically proven to reverse the aging process. You will see reduction in wrinkles, increase luminosity, and improve pigmentation, sagging, skin tone, and radiance.
For more information or to order CO2 Lift, ask your skincare professional or go to co2lift.com.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Your Home TV with Kathy Ireland and their channel partners. Head to yourhometv.com for free, family-friendly programming, streaming 24/7.
In business and in life, there's always an upside. Finding it is often the challenge. Having a mindset that looks for it and embraces problems as opportunities is the key to thriving. Finding the upside with Maria de Lorenzis Reyes explores the transformative power of optimism, featuring visionary business owners, influential leaders, and inspiring everyday people. Tune in and see how they navigate changing conditions with optimism and innovation. Watch the special series One Tough Chick, highlighting resilient and powerful women, streaming on yourhometv.com.
Tune in to A Moment of Zen, Saturday nights from 9 to 10 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Tortora Promotions, specializing in white glove digital marketing, social media management, professional videography, and PR services. Based in New York City and partnering with hundreds of businesses nationwide, they deliver proven strategies that bring more customers through the door. If your old marketing methods aren't keeping up, Tortora Promotions can step in to help you stay ahead. Grow your brand and drive real results. Reach out today and follow them on Instagram at Tortora Promotions. Your business deserves it.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area and beyond. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, XenSams. Welcome back to the Elevated Experiences segment brought to you by MTK Group and the MTK Travel Club, where travel isn't transactional, it's curated, and luxury isn't louder, it's smarter. Reinvention is the ultimate destination. We're chatting evolution, access, and elevated living. Because reinvention today isn't just personal, it's experiential. It's about where you go, who you surround yourself with, and how intentionally you design your life. My guest today lives that philosophy in real time. Leanne Locken is a television personality, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and cultural force best known for The Real Housewives of Dallas. Raised in an unconventional environment and shaped by resilience, she's built a life defined by reinvention, discernment, and elevated self-expression. She's also deeply passionate about travel, not as content, but as context, a way to expand perspective, curate relationships, and choose environments that support growth. Leanne, welcome to the show, superstar.
Hi, I'm glad to be back.
So excited to have you back. Now I want to chat how Real Housewives entered your life. So reality television today is a multi-billion-dollar industry. You know this, and it shapes public narrative and personal brands. But despite the scale, entry points are often personal, not strategic. So how did The Real Housewives of Dallas first come into your life? And what made you say yes to stepping into that role?
You know, it's interesting because it came into my life disguised as something else, not Real Housewives of Dallas. It came into my life scripted as How to Make It in Dallas. And I've always been someone who believes in personal growth and teaching others how to make connections to get stronger and to grow bigger. So for me, it was an opportunity to really, at the time, I was highly involved in charity and nonprofit. And it was an opportunity for me to showcase some of these tiny, tiny, tiny nonprofits that no one would ever hear about and give them a national platform. So when it came to me as How to Make It in Dallas, I was like, well, this is how you make it in Dallas. I was very blunt. I was very like, this is how we do it. And then, of course, after filming it, it converted into Housewives, which then became a whole new different vehicle, and which I'm grateful for, because I certainly got the ability to extend a tremendous amount of life stories to people across the world and connect with people across the world, which was my biggest bonus of being on the show.
So separate from how you got there, these shows come with emotional consequences, and
Oof.
psychology and media research shows prolonged public scrutiny can actually alter self-perception and increase stress and impact long-term decision-making when your life is edited and judged publicly, right? So How did having your life, the drama, the relationships, the emotional highs and lows played out on screen shape you personally, and how did it affect your career trajectory?
I will say this, the most unexpected thing about being on television and having my life showcased on television and then not being a part of the editing process so that it could be edited any way they want. The most positive thing that it did for me was I took it as a therapy. I watched myself on television and I could sort of see things that I liked and see things that I didn't like. And then adding the public scrutiny is just pure torture, because most of media, social media, is driven, the loudest portion of social media is also the smallest portion of social media. So that's something that I always try to make sure people in the limelight know, that the loudest percentage is not your overall answer of what's really happening. But it taught me, it helped me grow and become the woman I am today. It helped me become stronger. It helped me become more effective. And it showed me parts of myself that needed to change and that I gratefully changed.
Wow. I mean, that's looking at the glass half full, right? Not half empty. And visibility, without a doubt, opens doors, but it also demands evolution. So that
Yes.
brings me to the next. I want to talk about the lowest point and the highest point, right? From a mental health context, right? So experts agree that reinvention rarely comes from comfort, right? It comes from disruption. And you've also been vocal about mental health and the inner work required to move forward. So looking back now, Leanne, what was the lowest point in your life? And how did that moment become a catalyst for the highest point you've ever experienced so far?
I will say that it is in my life, in my particular life, not in everyone's, but in my particular life, I've had several low points. And I think God puts you in those moments and pushes you like a kernel of popcorn. And if you don't learn to pop and grow, then you're just going to stay a burnt piece of popcorn. So I would say on the show, the hardest moment was always the cast trips and the misperception and purposeful misperception of the girls as to who I was. But what that taught me was how to stand up for myself, learn a better way of communicating in arguments. I've learned not just to focus on what the other person said, but to make sure that what I think and how I feel is also reflected in my speech back. It really, I mean, the lows give you the highs. You really can't, you can live your life, a life of quiet desperation on the sofa watching television and end up going nowhere. Or you can put yourself in moments where, you're that piece of kernel and popping is the most glorious thing you can do,
I love this analogy. Now, I want to talk about the biggest life lesson. So, behavioral psychology research shows that people who intentionally reflect on adversity develop greater resilience and clarity in future chapters. What is the single best lesson life has taught you to date?
Not to quit. Not to quit, honestly. Like, I think, saying no and walking away sometimes is a healthy thing depending on the situation. But overall, what is it that you were trying to gain from that situation? So if it's a relationship, if you're in a bad relationship, yes, saying no and walking away is a healing process to learn a new way to live. But overall, if having a relationship is what you want, don't quit. For me, it was that, not to quit. I've always been a person who loved being a part of television, and it seems that my reinvention has a cyclical cycle of about 4 to 5 years, and I'm grateful every time God puts it on my plate because I say yes.
I love what you just said. It has a cyclical, recycling of 4 to 5 years. That's about right, because you come off of one project, you come off of one chapter in life. You're not immediately jumping to the next. You're really reflecting, you're curating, you're integrating. And then when you do come out, like you said, like a phoenix, you rise from, whether you call it ashes or whatever you're rising from, that is that pivotal moment. But the fact that you've seen that it takes you that 3 to 4 years or 3 to 5 years to come back out and fresh is giving a lot of people perspective that this doesn't happen overnight, right? These growths, these chapters, they take time.
Yes.
And now travel style and experience preferences. So when you look at the studies, those from Harvard and Cornell, it shows that experiential purchases like travel create longer lasting happiness than material ones, especially when travel is immersive and intentional. Now, when you travel, Leanne, what kind of experience are you drawn to? Immersive culture, a true beach reset, or a blend? And do you prefer traveling solo, with friends, or with family?
Well, I'm lucky enough that right after COVID, I came out with two of my dearest friends that live in Florida, and we created Eternal Traveler magazine. And we traveled during COVID, and we still travel today. I'm not a solo traveler. I am the kind of traveler that needs to be pushed a little bit to go to the extra late night party instead of just staying in my cabin. But I will tell you, I cannot agree more with memories and moments over things. There are moments from our travels that will forever be something that we can laugh about, joke about. To this day, we still have multiple moments of things we've done, you know, on our trips that we'll send pictures to back and forth of each other, and it's just like, you just laugh. And to be able to create a moment like that where you can always look at that and laugh, that is priceless. And that is why travel, I think, especially with friends and family, is priceless. You can't replace it with things. I don't care how great the Hermes bag is. It will not last as long as moments in time spent enjoying and laughing.
That's travel as nourishment, not escape, right there. Again, you're at that next elevated level of just even being aware of who you are. You're very motivational. I love this narrative, and I love where the conversation is heading. Now I want to talk about favorite destinations and 2026 trends. So looking at 2026, this year, forecasts from Skift Virtuoso and the WTTC highlight a shift towards slow travel and cultural depth and access. And trending destinations are now including Japan, beyond Tokyo, southern Italy, Portugal, Morocco, Iceland, and select South American cities. So what are some of your favorite destinations in the world, and which places are calling you next? I want to know some insider tips.
I will say that a Mediterranean cruise that I took in 2024 was just one of the most wonderful trips that we've ever taken. My two friends and I have ever taken together. Sometimes we researched the city and we did our own thing, and we ended up in the most amazing, cafe built into the hillside overlooking a private beach. And it just, the sangria was woo. And, some of the best beaches that I've ever been to were in Lefkada, Greece. The color of the ocean was so pure blue. I love the Caribbean. I love the Mediterranean. Barcelona. I would love to go back to Barcelona. I didn't have enough time in Barcelona. The city itself is just so full of culture. Honestly, for me, it's never really been so much about the destination, unless it had to be warm, but it's also about who you go with. And so to make it an overall true experience, take people that you love, that when you're done, you sit back down and you go, God, that was great. Where's next? I mean, I look on my phone at different places, and there's a place in Japan, a big, huge, amusement park in Japan surrounded by beautiful water. And I'm dying to try that. I'm not necessarily interested in going where people push me to go. I'd rather find a place that is off the beaten path that will offer me more personal experiences.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, and more importantly, you're a well-seasoned traveler. You know the places that will really evoke that emotion and create those memories. So I love that you're coming from a professional perspective.
Yes.
Now,
And coming up, it's best time to go to Aruba in February. So it's coming up. If you need a good tan, Aruba's ready.
okay, noted to our listeners. Aruba, guys, she's telling you to go to Aruba. Now, I want to talk about balancing multiple ventures right now. So long-term success comes from discernment. I believe that, not constant hustle, right? How do you balance multiple ventures but still stay grounded and aligned? What's your trick?
You know, my genuine trick is to dedicate time, whether it's like Sunday is family day or, date night, or Monday I work specifically on social media. Wednesday I work specifically on scripting my new TV show. Whatever it is, I dedicate time. And then once that time ends, close the book, put it away, and live. If you don't enjoy life and continue to live your life, you will not have the energy, the capacity, the emotion to really put into whatever it is you're creating. Set time aside, dedicate that time, but then when that time is done, move on to the next thing. Relax, enjoy, and then move on.
Yeah. That's the difference between expansion and burnout.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
So you mentioned something, caught my attention. You said you're working on a new TV show. So I want to know, as we head into 2026, there's a cultural shift towards intentional living, fewer commitments, higher standards, right? What does this next chapter look for you? What are you intentionally saying yes and no to?
In 2026, I am intentionally saying yes to writing and co-hosting a creation called Ladies on Late Night. It'll be on our local Fox network to start with, our first season, and then they're already talking about possibly syndicating it. So I'm looking at having fun and spreading fun. It's all we do is play games, silly games. It's late nights, like 11:30 at night. So it's 3 grown women playing games of never have I ever, or take a sip if you've done this, or answering love lounge questions to helping people with their relationships. Really kind of fun stuff. Just going over today's hot topics and what's trending and giving our opinions on it, which, God knows, if you're a housewife, you've got more than a few opinions.
Oh, yes. And that right there is reinvention with clarity. I love that. I can't wait to watch the show.
Thank you. It's going to be good. It's going to premiere in January, so I'm looking forward to it. And in 2026, that's really what I'm looking forward to. Creating what I want, letting go of what I don't, and breathing and enjoying my moments, including the still ones.
Wow, this has been such a great interview. We could continue talking for another 30 minutes on life and lessons and whatnot. But you are amazing. I definitely want to have you come back on. I thank you for reminding us that reinvention is the ultimate destination, and that
Definitely.
elevated live. Yeah. And that, more importantly, what I got from this elevated living is about access, alignment, and intentional design. And you've done all of that. So I'm so honored that I got the chance to talk to you firsthand. And really this has been a great interview.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to MTK Group and the MTK NYC Travel Club, curators of elevated experiences built on insight, access, and intention. And you can follow the amazing Leanne Locken on the gram and on X and across all social media at Leanne Locken. Stay with us, because elevation isn't accidental, it's informed. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by MTK Group New York. Experience travel without limits. MTK Travel Club, part of MTK Group New York, offers exclusive access to private jet travel, 5-star resorts, and unforgettable luxury experience designed around you. From seamless departures to personalized itineraries, we elevate every moment of your journey. MTK Travel Club makes extraordinary travel effortless. Visit mtkgroupny.com today to discover a new level of luxury. A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Your Home TV with Kathy Ireland and their channel partners. Head to yourhometv.com for free, family-friendly programming, streaming 24/7.
Are you looking to build a new home? Think about building a barn-dominium. There's just something about getting away from it all. Country living, fresh air, and outdoor entertainment. Watch luxury barn-dominium tours on your home TV and let Stacy Lynn, the barn-dominium lady, take you on a journey through her barn-dominium designs.
Tune in to A Moment of Zen, Saturday nights from 9 to 10 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Once Upon a Coconut.
Discover the refreshing taste of 100% pure coconut water that actually tastes great. Naturally sweet with no artificial flavors or added sugar. It's packed with electrolytes to keep you hydrated throughout your day. And with 10% of profits going to charity, every sip makes a difference. Pure taste, pure goodness. Experience nature's Gatorade. Visit Once Upon a Coconut or naturesgatorade.com.
Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, XenSams. Welcome back to the Brain Blueprint segment brought to you by the Melillo Centers. Today's conversation is one so many people are living, whether they have the language for it yet or not. ADD, ADHD, even tics. They're often talked about as disorders, problems to fix, medicate, or manage. But neuroscience tells us that's an incomplete story. So ADD, often used to describe the inattentive presentation of ADHD, and ADHD itself are neurodevelopmental conditions that affect attention regulation, emotional regulation, impulse control, and executive function. The key word there is regulation, not intelligence, not creativity, not potential. And according to the CDC, about 11% of U.S. children aged 5 to 17 have been diagnosed with ADHD at some point, and roughly 10% of U.S. adults currently live with an ADHD diagnosis. Many adults, especially women, are diagnosed later in life, often after years of feeling overwhelmed and scattered or emotionally exhausted without understanding why. What research and clinical experience increasingly show is that many people with ADD and ADHD are highly creative, intuitive, and emotionally perceptive, traits often associated with right brain dominant processing. When that kind of brain is unsupported or out of balance, if you will, it can look like emotional overwhelm, difficulty focusing or prioritizing, anxiety, and burnout. But when it's understood and supported, it can become an extraordinary strength. So today, we're not talking about fixing brains. We're talking about understanding them. Joining me, as always, is the expert who helps us translate brain science into real life, Dr. Robert Melillo. He's a world-renowned brain expert, best-selling author, and founder of the Melillo Centers, internationally recognized for his research-based work in ADD, ADHD, autism, and neurological imbalances, with a focus on root causes, not just symptoms. And I'm so excited to welcome our guest into this conversation, Mackenzie Westmore. She's an actress, a singer, a producer, an entrepreneur, and a mother, and a lifelong creative. From her early work in film to her decade-long role on Passions to hosting Face Off and building Westmore Beauty into a global brand, Mackenzie has built a career fueled by intuition, creativity, and vision. She's also been very open about recognizing ADD traits in her own life and about advocating even for her son when his brain needed support, clarity, and care. Mackenzie, welcome to the show, superstar.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Melillo, so glad to have you back on.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, so research shows that ADHD often looks different in women. Less hyperactivity, more internalized overwhelm, emotional intensity, and mental fatigue, which can delay recognition for years. Now, you've shared that you were never formally diagnosed, Mackenzie, yet you clearly recognize ADD traits in yourself. When did you first realize your brain worked differently, not incorrectly?
I love that you put it that way, that it's differently and not incorrectly. Thank you. Because I think some people do have that tendency to say there's something wrong, or there should never be a negative stamp on these things. You're right. It's just different. I can't really say that there was a specific time. I just know that when I was around 12, my mom was the one that saw that there was something different with me, and she had me go through the testing to find out that I had Tourette syndrome. So with the diagnosis of Tourette's, that's what then propelled me through the years to see changes happen. As I got into my 20s then, that's when panic disorder started. I ended up in the hospital multiple times thinking I had a heart attack. It was not, it was panic attacks. And I started to then really learn and be on this mission to understand brain chemicals. And ironically, when I was in between jobs and really couldn't get a job in Hollywood, I ended up working for a holistic doctor and started to study dopamine, GABA, serotonin, and really wanted to understand the brain chemicals and what was it that I was going through, and to maybe help other people what they're going through. But really, I wanted to know what am I dealing with here? And as time went on, I do find that, even though I don't have a formal diagnosis of ADD, ADHD, I definitely can feel and see that there are things that I will go through and deal with. I mean, Zen, I think we talked about this, the amount of notes that I have on my phone, timers, calendar logs. I mean, people look at my phone, they're like, OMG, like there's thousands of notes in your notepad. The amount of I think I looked today and I have like 700 unread texts. So it's things like that where I have to go back through and mark unread so that my brain will see the blue dot. And like it's almost like hypnosis to some of these things of what I have to do and look for to keep myself on track, because there is so much that goes on in my life that I can't miss a beat.
A clinical perspective, this is just a great example of, we throw labels out there like ADD, ADHD, Tourette's, and not really understanding the complexity of what's actually happening in the brain. Like you said, you search for chemicals, but it's a lot more complicated than that. It's not just chemical imbalances. It's a lot more. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of comorbidity, which means that, again, you look at ADHD, but you also started with Tourette's. And we know that in most cases, people that are labeled with ADHD also have at least one or two other diagnoses, most commonly Tourette's or even autism or OCD. Those overlap with each other. So again, just looking at a label, it really doesn't explain, and each person is an individual. And that's where I've always spoken about, and I've developed what's called functional neurology, functional neuroscience, which is about really understanding what exactly happens in the brain. So 2 questions. One is, do you really feel effectively explained to you, like what is happening in the brain in tics or Tourette's? And you also just told us recently that you got another diagnosis that really kind of goes more into my wheelhouse. And if you could kind of explain that story a little bit.
Sure. Nobody has really gone into any detail of what goes on with Tourette's. All I know is that I can control it to a certain degree. For example, when I was on the soap opera Passions, I would always record myself in my dressing room so that I could see how I was doing during my rehearsal. Now, my brain knew that when the cameras weren't rolling, my tics would be firing off. All the motor tics, all the verbal tics, everything was going. As soon as they would yell rolling, and I knew the camera was going, that it was like perfect. Like face was perfect. My eyes tend to do the tics. So if you see me blinking a lot, everybody thinks I wear contacts. I don't. That's one of my tics. I'll furrow my brow. I'll open my jaw because I'm stretching them. It's those are more my tics. So that's the only thing that I know of as far as the Tourette side. Now, going from there, as of 2020, and even before that, actually, Doctor, since you bring this up, when I was 12, I had what seemed like a seizure. And nobody could quite understand, and they disappeared. And then come 2020, when the pandemic hit and the stress of the pandemic, these seizures started back up again. And if you were to watch me go through it, it looks like a traditional seizure. The only difference is I feel it coming on. I've had a gazillion EEGs, EKGs, everything, even the 72-hour one where I looked like an egghead and had to go around like that. Didn't want to leave my house. But they tested everything. Everything came back normal. But nobody could explain why I'm going through these seizures, or why I can hear little bits as I'm going through it, even though I can't move, I can't see, I can't verbalize. It's a very interesting thing to go through, and it's not often that it happens, but it's under extreme distress. And it's very upsetting, I know, for my family, obviously. And again, it was chalked up to seizures until I went through testing. Nobody could give me a diagnosis. The only thing is I have a friend that's mentioned to me, her 12-year-old daughter just went through something very similar, she was given the diagnosis of FND.
FND stands for functional neurological disorder. And it was actually something that was labeled many years ago. And in my work and my group, I created an organization called the International Association of Functional Neurology and Rehab. So, our work and our research has been in the forefront of this. And that's the case, is that most people that have neurological symptoms, even severe symptoms like people like, non-speaking autism or severe tics, most of their MRIs, their genetic testing, their metabolic testing, their EEGs are completely normal. But yet clearly there's an issue. And that's where, I've been talking about this from the very beginning, is that it's a functional disconnection. That's my area of research. That's our lab, where networks are discoordinated and out of balance with one another, and it causes overactivity in certain areas but it's invisible to any measurement other than actually understanding what's happening in the brain. Like tics come from overactivity of an area in the left brain called Brodmann area 6, or the premotor area, which is normally kept in check by the right brain in that same area. So these functional imbalances is at the root. But somebody recently just sent me an article about functional neurological disorder and how it's being used now in traditional medicine as a diagnosis. And that's great, because I've been talking about this for almost 30 years. And obviously for much of that time, people in the mainstream medicine thought I was crazy, right?
And there's also a strong overlap, like you said, Dr. Miller, between tics and Tourette's and ADHD and OCD and anxiety and sensory processing differences. And this tells us something important, that we're not just looking at isolated symptoms. We're looking at how the brain regulates attention and emotion and movement and inhibition as a whole. So I love where this conversation is going, because when we're talking about, being able to identify or proper diagnoses, this is a very important part of the conversation. So it also, the distinction helps people stop confusing neurological wiring with personal failure, because that's the most important part, because society, of course, labels people. And Mackenzie is a highly, highly successful individual across all areas of her career. So it's interesting, because many adults with ADD or ADHD rely on external systems, like Mackenzie said, notes, reminders, routines, not because they're incapable, but because their brains thrive with support. So, Mackenzie, you've talked about using tools and systems to stay on track. Do you see those as limitations or as supports that actually protect your creativity? Does it work?
For me personally, it supports me. It helps me. I know some people, it would probably drive them nuts. But for me, if I don't keep like my list of notes, if I don't have my list of to-dos, I have a continual to-do list just as that reminder. So for me, it's a massive help. And I've even made it to the point where I've put my husband on the calendar, so that if I miss something, God forbid, he's right there on it to help me. You really, to me, it takes a village in any area of life. But for me, in this specific area of what we're talking about, it takes a village to have those around me that help to go, okay, this is what we need to do. This is where we're at. So for me, it does help. And I know, we talked just briefly earlier about my son. He also has ADD and was diagnosed at a very young age. He does the same thing. I realized the other day he was on his phone, and I thought it was just a teenager on his phone. And he was like, no, I'm making notes. And I was like, oh, of course, you're my kid. Of course you're making notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, most people, because they're never really addressing the root cause, they're taught how to manage it, right? So medication is really a management tool. Using different calendars or activities is about managing. It's not about addressing the root cause, but managing is good. It's fine. I mean, obviously trying to manage it in your life, but the real answer is to try to get to the root cause. And there are different types of ADHD that people don't know, and they require different types of effects. And they are all superimposed on this whole neurodivergent movement of traits. And in fact, I always say then that all of these things are more likely to happen the more gifted you are. The more gifted your child is, the more gifted, the stronger an area of the brain is It may cause a disconnection with other networks, but it's so dynamic. This is why you're able to actually, when you're working and the camera comes on, you're literally able to suppress it because it's a functional imbalance. But you can, not knowing what you're doing, you can overcome it at times, but you're not able to sustain it. But that means it can be changed and it can be corrected. And there is also another layer to this. There's an immunological component to it, that you can have antibodies that can form against your brain. And so that can also complicate this. And that may be, you also mentioned when you got sick later on in life, it came back. But even that, the problem in the gut and the immune system, it starts brain and it starts with brain development, but it really is superimposed on a gifted brain, but an out of balance brain.
Interesting. I'm curious, is there like cures for it? Because I've always been told there is no cure for Tourette's. There is no cure for ADD. It is a lifelong thing. And and I'm finding that as I get older, the Tourette's is getting worse.
Honestly, that's one of the things that bugs me the most. The people that tell you that, if you ask them what it is, they'll say, we don't know what it is. I don't know. I have no idea. But they'll turn around and tell you that you can't do anything about it. So this started me on this road because my son was labeled with ADHD. And I went to all these different doctors and therapists and friends and people that I thought would know. And I said, well, what is it? And they all said, well, we don't know. Nobody knows, I think. But there's nothing you can do about it anyway. And I said, wait a second, you just said you don't know what it is, but you can't. That doesn't make any sense. So the fact, if you really understand the brain, if you understand functional neuroscience, you understand that when there is no damage, there's no genetic mutation, there's no chemical imbalance, there's no injury, why can't you change it? What would prevent that? It doesn't make any sense. And yes, so my book, Disconnected Kids, as well as 8 other books that I've written, as well as over 100 scientific papers, are all about how do we change this system in the most comprehensive way. And we work with tens of thousands of patients, and we do it every day at the most severe level. And we can completely eliminate without changing the neurodivergence, meaning that they still keep their unique personalities, their unique traits about them that make them special. But we can take away the thing that is causing the tics or the OCD or the hyperactivity or all of those things.
One thing that I just is coming to mind is, Mackenzie, you said you were diagnosed with tics and Tourette's, right? And Tourette syndrome. So Tourette syndrome sits on the more complex end of the tic spectrum. I mean, it's a neurological condition characterized by both motor tics and vocal tics that persist for a long time, like more than a year, right? And usually, to your point, it begins in childhood. But Tourette's is not a behavioral issue, right? It's not a behavioral issue. It's not a lack of discipline or something someone simply can control. It's really, like to Dr. Melillo's point, rooted in brain-based regulation differences, particularly, and I've learned this by doing all these segments with Dr. Melillo, in the circuits that manage movement and impulse control and inhibition. And what many people don't realize is that tics exist on a continuum, right? Not everyone with tics has Tourette's, and not everyone with Tourette's experiences severe or constant symptoms. So it's interesting that you're saying your tics changed over time, right? They can wax and they can wane, and they are often influenced by stress and fatigue and sensory overload. So ironically, trying to suppress a tic often makes it rebound stronger, like you said. So it's much like holding in a sneeze, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's exactly. There's a strong overlap between tics, Tourette's, and ADHD, and all of, OCD and sensory processing differences. So this tells us a lot. We're not just looking at isolated symptoms, right? We're looking at how the brain regulates attention and emotion. This is fascinating conversation. Now, you mentioned your son earlier. What helped you trust your intuition and pursue support for your son when something didn't feel right?
What happened was, it was during that period where I was working in the holistic medicine side of things and was studying more of, the brain chemicals and how they affect us. I'll never forget, he was about 6 or 7, and we were seeing obvious signs. I mean, even down to his first grade teacher calling me and saying that come during certain testing times, she would have to let him go into the yard of the school and just run laps. She knew well enough. And so she brought that to my attention, that he and maybe like one other kid in the class were just, they had to go run. They had to burn off the energy, and then they could come back and they could take their test. And he came to me one day and he said, Mommy, my brain hurts. I don't know what to do. My brain hurts. And that just, as a mother, breaks your heart, because it's like that mama bear comes out. It's like, okay, I'm on a mission now to find out what's going on. And I'd always been told that coffee was the kind of thing. And doctor, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but at least at the time I was told coffee especially with a child, I knew it was going to go one of two ways. Either if I got him a venti frappuccino, as much sugar and coffee as I could get in this kid's system, around 8:00 at night. And I knew he was either going to go to sleep or he was going to be wired and I'd be staying up with him. It put him to sleep. So I found that so fascinating. That's when I called his pediatrician the next day and I said, okay, we got something here. I want to do some deeper digging into this. And that's when, we were able to get to the bottom and the root of what was going on.
Wow. I mean, early understanding can definitely change the entire trajectory for a child. Now, despite how common ADD and ADHD are, we know stigma still exists, especially in creative industries where burnout is normalized, right? So
Yeah.
if you could reframe ADD or ADHD for creatives in one sentence, not as a diagnosis, but as an identity, what would you want people to understand?
I would want people to understand and to be more patient. I would love to see more patience among people in understanding, and even for those of us that do deal with this, to be patient with ourselves. That's something I've had to learn. I've had to learn to be patient with myself and not beat myself up, to not put myself down, to not speak negatively to myself, but to allow myself to be okay with this. And I am okay. And that's why I'm on this mission now of being more open to advocate and help others to know that there is nothing wrong. We're different. We're hardwired differently. So the biggest thing for me is understanding that, and patience with others and patience with ourselves.
And that reframe alone can change someone's relationship with their brain forever, what you
Absolutely.
just said. And now I'm going to go back and touch on something that I have memories of you saying when you were on Passions. I believe you mentioned this in one of our interviews, but you told me there was so much pressure around you being perfect, physically looking perfect, delivering your lines perfectly, that put a lot of stress and pressure on you as a human being and led to disorders, right? Whether it was your eating disorders or a tic or an OCD. Can you talk to me about a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. There was a lot of pressure on us that, very early on we learned, number one, if you couldn't deliver your scene, which sometimes it was 20 pages in one take, your character was going to get pushed aside. So the ones that were starring, that you see starring on Passions, which I was one of them, it's because we got everything done in one take, which is very difficult. It's extremely hard to do. Then on top of it, it was very much driven to, if you weren't under a size 0, which at 5'8", it's pretty hard. But I got there. Sadly, I got there at a double 0. And then I was hospitalized. And I should have stayed in the hospital for 6 months, but I got called back to be on set. And it was a vicious cycle of perfection. And that's where I really had to lock my tics in and like put them in a box and lock the key and just throw them away until I was done with work.
I'm crying for your younger self because you're my friend.
Thank you.
Sweetie,
and thank you. You make me cry now.
No, I'm really I'm holding back tears because that's the part of the industry nobody talks about.
They don't. And it's got me, Xen. It's gotten better. I do feel the industry is opening its eyes up a little bit, but early 2000s was rough. I watched that documentary that came out, I think it was on Netflix, about what all the Nickelodeon kids went through, and it was not far off. And weirdly enough, one of my cameramen from Passions is on that documentary. We were put through hell. And I'm only now recently coming out about this because I feel enough time has passed and we need to talk about these things. And they really, even down to simple things, and I'm sorry, this is segueing off a little bit, but simple things like I had a miscarriage and it didn't matter. my character, they made pregnant and they poured fake blood on my crotch and I had to go through reenacting. And the therapy I went through and the amount of tears I went through in my dressing room. And then they had my character give birth months after I lost my own. And so I'm holding some other woman's baby and my baby then gets kidnapped in the show. And it just, I look back on this going, how did I survive? How did I not kill myself? Because it just was so traumatic. But I've always had this will of fighting through and pushing through. And that's why I'm on this mission today to help others, because I know what I've been through. And it just was by the grace of God and finding a good foundation and holding on to my family and holding on to some sort of strength and higher power that it's the only reason why I can attribute that I'm here today, because I really technically should not be.
Okay, Dr. Melillo, this is you're taking over right now. I'm trying to get my emotions.
Again, my heart goes out as well. You know, I have a daughter in the entertainment industry as well, so I and my wife was in it. But you know, I mean, that's why all I can say is I'd love to be able to help you and really just even give you more information and real information, and because you know, again, as I said, you're a very talented, gifted person, and what you've done is heroic, and as a lot of people do, but it doesn't have to be that hard. It can actually be changed so that you can keep all of your gifts and not have to fight so hard. I remember I had one woman who, you know, had become a lawyer in New York City, and during the pandemic, she came to me because she said she had adult ADHD and, you know, all of that. And it turned out that she had more of a left brain issue. And we just did one treatment on her. And she went home that night and texted me. And she said, I was able to come home and work for hours in flow without any problem. And I went to sleep without any problem. And I woke up and I felt great. And she texted at the end, she said, is this how normal people feel? Meaning, is this how everybody feels? Like and not meaning that in a negative way. She meant like, and I told her, I said, you don't understand how much you struggled, and you don't understand what it took for you to go through law school and be a successful lawyer. And you don't understand what you overcome. And that's what she texted me. She was like, is this how other people feel all the time? And she had no idea, because you've only known this since you were a child.
Exactly. And I can't even right now, like I can't even imagine what it would be like to have a normal night's sleep, to be unmedicated, to be able to function. And I've even told my husband, and it sounds weird, but I've said to him at times where I've said, I'm jealous of you. And he's like, what? And I'll say, I'm jealous because you think normal. I don't know what that's like. I don't know what it's like to go through my day and be normal. And I feel like, Xen, you've just dropped a gift in my lap of the doctor, because I mean, if I have a chance of, and even for my son, to actually live just one normal day would be a miracle to me.
Wow, so many blessings in this conversation. And many people with undiagnosed ADD, ADHD, tics, Tourette, experience anxiety and burnout, not because they're weak, but because their brains are constantly compensating. I've learned this from Dr. Melillo. And before you even had language for what was happening, did those traits ever translate into emotional exhaustion?
Oh, yeah.
All the time, right?
All the time. I mean, that's why I feel bad, because I feel, my family will get sometimes the worst side of me, because I've got to give my best and most of my energy to my job, and to make sure that I'm making ends meet, and I'm doing everything that I can to create that whole picture. But then when I'm behind the scenes, that's when I go into relaxation mode, but that's also not always my best mode.
Well, it's interesting, because naming that experience or all these, it helps people realize they were never broken, just unsupported, exactly. Right? You were never broken. You were just
nobody's broken.
No, you just didn't have the support system and the tools in place, and a doctor like Dr. Melillo to explain to you what's going on in your brain. But I think most doctors don't understand it themselves. And we have a researcher and a clinician here who is at the top of his field. Dr. Melillo, you are incredible.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you for an incredible segment and always making it all make sense, because I can't even make sense of this stuff most of the time.
Oh, thank you. Zen. And Mackenzie, really, your bravery is inspiring. So just, thank you so much. And I look forward to speaking to some more to you about this.
Yes. To learn more about ADD, ADHD, and brain-based balance, you could visit the Melillo Centers because understanding the brain changes absolutely everything. You could follow Mackenzie Westmore and explore her work directly on the gram. And you could check her out at westmorebeauty.com. And you can definitely check out Dr. Robert Melillo at drrobertmelillo.com and on the gram at Dr. Robert Melillo. And also Mackenzie has a personal page at M Westmore. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. That was the Brain Blueprint segment brought to you by the Melillo Centers. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by the Melillo Method Centers, where hope truly lives, specializing in ADHD, dyslexia, autism, and other neurological challenges. Dr. Robert Melillo and his team create personalized treatment plans that go beyond symptom management. Using advanced neuroscience, they help children and adults reach their fullest potential. Families worldwide choose the Melillo Method for answers and results. Begin your journey to better brain health at drrobertmelillo.com. A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Your Home TV with Kathy Ireland and their channel partners. Head to yourhometv.com for free, family-friendly programming, streaming 24/7.
The Kelly Williams Show is brought to you by Serendipity Yacht Cruises and Events. Tune in and turn on your happy. Kelly Williams is full of energy and incredible guests. Watch her anytime, free programming on Your Home TV network, and do follow her on social media for a chance to win monthly prizes. Check out The Kelly Williams Show on yourhometv.com.
Tune in to A Moment of Zen, Saturday nights from 9 to 10 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Skin by Sari. Nationally recognized injector Sari Katz is redefining cosmetic treatments with an approach that's subtle, precise, and confidence-driven. Whether you're new to injectables or looking for an expert touch, Sari creates results that enhance your natural features. Never mask them. Discover what personalized aesthetics should feel like. To learn more, visit skinbysari.com or follow at skinbysari on Instagram. A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Westbridge Academy in Essex County, where students are seen, heard, and understood. Neurodiverse K-12 students, many facing ADHD, anxiety, depression, or aggression, discover strength through connection. With compassionate educators, therapeutic support, and the latest technology, students can master academics and go further, exploring music production, financial and automotive literacy, social media awareness, and wellness. Visit westbridgeacademy.org to learn more.
Well, that's a wrap, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, XenSams. Remember to join me right here on A Moment of Zen every Saturday, and you can head directly to amomentofzen.com for live listening links and episode downloads in your city. Also remember that we're live on Traverse TV Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern, YouTube Sundays at 2 p.m. Eastern, and all episodes of A Moment of Zen are available on Your Home TV streaming platform. You could head directly to mox.yourhometv.com. Thank you for listening to us. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Thanks again to all of our sponsors and partners. And remember that happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it. We'll be back next week.